Well, hi everybody, it's Lisa Tamati here from Running Hot Coaching, and thanks for joining us today. We're going to answer some questions. I've got my business partner in crime, Neil Wagstaff, exercise scientist living in the Hawke's Bay, and g'day Neil. And
how are you?
He's been my coach for over a decade. He knows so much. What he's forgotten more than I'll ever know. So it's really great to have him chime in on all these great questions. Now, I put up a post on my Facebook group that asked people what they are facing with their main challenge that they're facing, any specific things that they were really fighting with. So I got some fantastic questions, and we're going to try and answer those today. Now, remember, we are not doctors, so this does not replace medical advice, and we haven't examined you if you've got a specific injury. So please, obviously consult your doctor if you've got something really wrong going on. But we're going to try and answer these as experienced coaches and as an experienced athlete. We're going to give you what we think is happening. Okay, so the first question comes from Sharon Colley, who is an ultramarathon runner from Australia. Hi Lisa, I'm training for the Big Red Run this year in June. My only concern is a pain in the back of my left knee. Doctor has said it's a muscle strain from a 100k ultra run I attempted in bad conditions last October. Have been working hard on getting it right, but still have a few issues with it once in a while. Just wondering if you have any extra tips on strengthening the knee before the big event. And we also had a similar query from Sandra Svetko. My biggest problem is a pain in the back of the knee. It's all because of a muscle, bicep femoris. She's had an MRI, but she hasn't been able to run for the last 6 weeks, and she has to go to physiotherapy. But have you got any advice? So for Sandra and for Sharon, Neil, can you, being the exercise scientist, I'll let you talk to this one.
Thanks, Liz. It's obviously, as you said at the start, Lisa, hard to obviously answer very, very specifically about seeing people move and taking them through a little bit of a movement screen, movement assessment. But real simply speaking, the first thing is, are you doing enough regular strength and mobility work? So if we assume that you should be doing strength work, ideally 2 sessions a week, and some sort of mobility work on a daily basis is what we recommend at Running Hot Coaching. Doesn't need to be long periods, it could be short duration and sort of 5-10 minutes a day. But those are the 2 things to make sure you're doing first. So once you know you're doing those, and if the ladies are already doing those, then good stuff, good for you, great job. You then want to make it a little bit more specific. So you want to make sure that any soft tissue that is currently tight, overactive, not functioning well, is relaxed and released. So real simple and easy way to do that is use something like a foam roller, cricket ball, hard tennis ball, something you can test the sensitivity of your muscles. You can lie on the floor and put the ball or the foam roller around the hip area. If you're getting pain rating with 1 being you're not feeling it at all, and you can relax and hang out there, and 10 being get this thing off me, this is excruciating, then it starts to tell you what parts of your body are sensitive. And guess what? Those parts of your body that are sensitive are going to need a little bit more love, they're going to need a little bit more looking after.
Yeah.
Now, the knee is a pretty simple joint, okay? Moves backwards and forwards. So a lot of the issues with the knee either happen above it or below it, okay? So and often with people that come in, we look at releasing the tissue around the knee and then above it and below it. So looking at the muscle that's attached into the knee, you've got the quads, the hamstrings. Below the knee, you've got the calves, all the muscles on the front of your lower shin as well.
Yep.
So making sure they're not tight, okay? Because if they're tight, I guarantee they will be pulling on the knee joint. And if they're pulling on the knee joint, that's going to give you some sort of discomfort, okay? So first thing is making sure those need relaxing. If they do need relaxing, it's then going through finding out which muscle it is. Once you know which muscle, you can then say, right, I know my quads are tight, or I know my hip flexors are tight, I know my calves are tight. You can then start exploring stretches for the calves, the quads, the hip flexors. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So your hips, your hips actually can affect your knees quite considerably, can't you? Like, it's all about the kinetic chain. So explain a little bit the kinetic chain, what that is, and why that's important.
So another thing we often see is, and it sounds crazy, but we might see some people come in and say, I've got shoulder pain. And we actually work back and establish that it's actually come from the foot. So real simply speaking, your foot, if the arch collapses, so the arch will collapse, that then put pressure on the muscles and tighten the muscles that are running up the back of the leg. So the arch has collapsed, you start getting tension around all the muscles in the calf complex. Those muscles then attach behind the knee, so there's some pulling on the knee there. So you could get a little bit of knee pain as well. That then comes up the kinetic chain and will start to affect the muscle and the soft tissue above the knee because they're connected. That can then affect the hip and start pulling that in a different direction. That then comes up the muscles of the back, which are attached at the back of the pelvis, all the way up, and those muscles come all the way up your back and can attach at your shoulder. So you can be walking around with a shoulder that's sore, or a foot that's sore, and it's one or the other that's causing it.
Yep.
Okay, so looking outside of the area that's sore really, really works well as well. The other part to remember as well is your body is covered in fascia as well. So I describe fascia like a superhero suit. Now, as you know, in my head, I'm a superhero, and I like to go out on Saturday night and have a look north to save people. And definitely, as far as my kids are concerned, I've got my superhero suit. Your fascia is like a superhero suit. You can imagine it pull over your body. That's all connected. So if there's any issues with the fascia as well, and a lot of the evidence and research we've been looking at in the past sort of 8 or 10 years indicates that addressing that as well. So letting the fascia do the job it should. That as well will need hydrating, so you need plenty of this. So quite often you can get some massive wins pain-wise and mobility-wise just by hydrating yourself more effectively. Okay? With the fascia as well and the soft tissue around your body, that holds stress and tension. So if you've got stress and tension in other areas of your life, guess what? You address that and it can address knee pain as well, or shoulder pain or hip pain. In this case, knee pain. Just coming back now, we talked about relaxing and releasing the muscles that connect onto the knee or those above it and below it. You've done your sensitivity test to see what muscles are tight. You now want to start strengthening the muscles that need strengthening as well. So some muscles you find will be short, tight, others will be long and weak. Great examples are glutes. A lot of people in this day and age sat like we are now. The muscles of the glutes get long and lazy, don't do the job they should. Other muscles need to take over their role, become short and tight. So we need to fire up and tighten those muscles that need tightening. Glutes is a great example.
Yep.
You get big muscles at the back of your body fired up, the glutes tight, especially the glute max, glute medius, and then that starts to hold the knee in a better position. All of a sudden it's got the support of the muscles up top, keeps the knee in good alignment, so when you're running and landing, you're not getting the kinetic chain that you refer to, Lisa, caving in. You're not getting the arch collapsing, you're not getting the knee caving in. The muscles are there to do their job. So in short and in summary is work out what muscles are tight, release them, relax them. Work out what muscles need strengthening, get them strengthened up. In particular with the knee, looking at the glute area and the hip area. Obviously core as well. Make sure you're looking after yourself with this because your body loves that. The fascia system, the muscular system, they love being well hydrated. Make sure you're sleeping well and getting enough rest and recovery.
And another point there would be the inflammation in the body. If you've got chronic inflammation, then you might want to attack that with something like turmeric or something. So if I've got a sore back or something, I'll hit it hard with some natural anti-inflammatories, and that can also help the whole system do its job properly and relieve those. So it's not just necessarily a sore knees caused from the knee. In other words, is what I mean. So
it'd be easy if it was.
Yeah, if you can give us like a couple of strengthening exercises that they can do for strengthening the knees and getting the glutes activated, because the glutes are a huge part of running.
Yeah, my favourite go-to is the floor bridge. So we use that with pretty much every one of our athletes at Running Hot Coaching. And the reason we use it is the floor bridge will get people to start firing their glutes again. Often the way I describe it to people is that they'll be talking English, but their glutes are still talking Chinese. So you need to bridge the communication gap, and you need to teach your glutes to start talking English, or you need to learn Chinese. It's probably easier to get your glutes to start talking, talking the same. You can lie flat on your back. You can have your knees bent and in close to your backsides. A light contraction with your core, so draw the belly button to the spine. You're going to push up and push your hips up towards the ceiling, keeping your head, neck and shoulders on the floor. Now, as you do that, you want to actively think about squeezing the glutes and contracting those. And if you're getting it right, you should feel the tension in the glutes. If you're feeling it in the hamstrings, you know they're doing the job instead, so you want to relax, go again and get the glutes doing the job. If you get lower back pain or tenderness, you know that the core switched off, so you want to reactivate that.
Yep.
All right. I also like doing it with a lot of our athletes at Running Hot. I like doing a banded one as well. It's exactly the same movement. You put a band around the outside of the knees, and then you get a nice static contraction of the muscles on the side of the hips. So you get stability through the side of the hip and you get stability through the glutes at the back as well.
We're talking here those mini, resistance bands that
little bands that's so big. They're either called a loop band. We like using the black roll ones, or a mini band.
Yeah,
but they are gold.
We've got those in our shop if anyone wants to buy a set of those. So they come in different variations of strength that you can use for different exercises, and highly recommend to have those in your home gym. Yeah. What about squats, Neil? Is that a good one for?
Yeah, I'd say squats, again, good to integrate, but I'd start with the isolation stuff first. So the floor bridge, anything where you're taking the leg out to the side, so a mini band walk. So you take the same mini band we were talking about, that can go around the knees or the ankles, and you're taking small steps to one side. So you're firing up the smaller, deeper muscles first. You want to get the stabilisation system firing first, then integrate that into something like a squat. The risk with going straight to the squat, if you've got a knee or a foot that's collapsing in, so if the foot collapses and the knee then follows, then it's going to do exactly the same when you're doing the squat. Yep. So you want to get the glute muscles fired up first. Then when you go to do the squat, you've got good alignment through the ankles, knees and hips. Everything's in good position. So yes, do the squat, but do the isolation exercise first.
A good tip with the squat is when you do go, you've advanced enough to do the squat, is to screw your legs into the floor a little bit and outwards so that it actually activates that glute. It's a little bit hard to demonstrate without showing you.
We've been doing a lot of good hand gestures today, haven't we?
Yeah,
glutes and.
Oh dear. All right, let's get on to the next question. This one comes from Renee Ferguson. I struggle to get out of what I call the long distance plod. After running a few ultras, Kepler and Naseby, I find I just plod along at the same speed no matter what I do. Man, I can hear you, sister. This is a big problem. Now, one of the things you have to understand that if you're going to do the super long stuff, you are going to sacrifice some of your speed. It's just part of the parcel. You cannot have extreme speed and extreme distance. Now, you get ultramarathon runners who are super fast, but if you took them into the shorter distance races, say, 10K, 5K, half marathon, what you'll find is they are extremely fast, and they have too lost some of their speed, but it's all relative to their genetic ability, if that makes sense. Now, what I do recommend you do is that you break your year into different cycles, okay? So if you're training for Naseby or Kepler this year or whatever, in that build-up time, you're going to be doing, the high, well, not high mileage, because we're not into high mileage training, but higher mileage. And there is going to be a lot of longer, slower, and that's what you're building for. But in the off-season, and in the pre or in the beginning part of your training for that, what we really highly suggest is that you really concentrate on form and technique. So running drills, making sure that you're running correctly, and strengthening exercises. So doing more explosive work, doing interval training, all of that sort of really important parts of the program. So you concentrate more on that on the off season, if you like, and then you concentrate more on the other long, slower stuff when you're building for the big race, okay? And that combination means that you will get the optimum out of your abilities. Remember, your genetic abilities are always going to be your limiting factor. And learning to accept that that's, who you are. But if you are running more correctly, if you're running, using your glutes right, you've got the proper posture going on, you've got all those sort of things coming from your running drills that you're doing religiously over, I do mine every week and use it in my warm-up phases and things like that, then you will run the most efficiently that you can for your body structure. So, yeah, that's just a few tips. Neil, have you got anything to add about fast twitch fibres, slow twitch fibres, that sort of thing?
I think it's just... It's making sure if you need to change the environment, change the environment. If you're training for something and you need to, and the goal is to be able to go long and slow, then focus on that goal. If the goal is that you need to go faster, don't trip yourself up and say, I need to be faster, when actually for the event you've got coming up, you truly don't need to be faster.
Yeah.
So and the reason I say that, I've had that conversation with a lot of people, and we've had it over the years as well, is that I'm slow, and using some of the conversations we've had, at least in the past, but you then go out, and once you get up over 50, 60, 70k, then you're cruising along quite nicely. So look at what the goal is, and then change the environment. If you really truly want to get faster, like you said, periodise the training year, do a block of technique training, throw some interval runs in. If you haven't got that in your training week, you can do that at any point in the training year. You can get some interval sessions in. Hill sessions are great as well. They help pick up the cadence on the feet. and they can be short or long depending on the event. But changing the environment works well.
And cadence is a big part of that, isn't it? A really fast leg turnover helps you run faster. I do my interval training, believe it or not, on a treadmill, because I find that I can control all the variables and all I have is the speed. So I can actually measure and I can also concentrate fully on my form when I'm on a treadmill and I'm not, worried about traffic or tripping over pathways or anything like crossing roads, that type of thing. And so I use that as my way to focus fully on form and on speed. And you might be doing a good warm-up obviously, and then a 6-time 1 minute interval, or depending on what your goals are. If you're doing a 5k race, it's different than if you're doing a half marathon, and again different than when you're doing long distance. But I certainly struggled because I've trained my body for many years doing long slow. That's all I knew, that's all I did for many years. And yes, it got me across the finish line, but it also absolutely destroyed my body. And to give you guys a bit of background, Neil came into my life when I was completely burnt out, adrenal fatigue, hormones up the wops. I had weight issues despite running hundreds of kilometres a week, and we're talking between 120 and 170 k's a week, where I should have been skin and bone, and I wasn't. And Neil came on and he built my body from scratch. He rebuilt the muscle. He made my core strong. The back pain disappeared. It rebuilt my hormones, and everything started to come back into line. And later on, when I stopped doing the super long stuff, and this is getting a little bit off topic because we're talking about weight loss here, when I started to do short, fast interval stuff, that's when I lost the weight. Sometimes what you can find is, this is especially true for women, and we're going to be doing a series on this later on if you're interested in that. You can run your ass off, literally. I mean, when I ran through New Zealand, I ran 2,250 k's and 42 k's. I mean, you can't do more than that. And I lost 1 kilo, and I put that more than that on within 2 weeks because my body was an emergency. It was an emergency, and it was going, any bit of food that it looked at, I just went straight to fat because it was in a state of stress. And so lowering your stress levels, and sometimes that means changing up what the training is. And this is why at Running Hot Coaching, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, we're not into the massive high mileage old traditional models. They don't work for 90% of the people. They might work for the 20-year-old elite athletes, but not for the rest of us. And if you're in your 30s and your 40s, you need to train differently, and we've got the answer for that. But we'll get on to the next question right now. We've got Mike Williams saying, it's just that I'm finding it hard to get started again after a long break. And Michael Robert Russ is saying the similar thing. I'm struggling for time and motivation. I've got 11k coming up in April. I know it's not far, but for me it is. I just struggle to get motivated, especially after a long day at work. Okay, mate, I hear what you guys are saying. Now, the first thing I want to go and do is to go and lock yourself in a dark room somewhere and sit and do some deep breathing. And then I want you to meditate on this. I want you to meditate and understand what your why is, okay? Why are you doing this? And I don't just want this to be on a superficial level. So if you say, well, I want to get fit, okay? That might be your first answer as to why you want to do this. And then I'll say, well, why do you want to get fit? Well, I've always had this goal of running a half marathon or 11k or whatever, and that's just, something I want to tick off my bucket list. And they'll say, well, why? And dig deeper until you start to get to the emotional triggers of what your real motivation is. So that means, what is it that are you doing it? A lot of, for example, might be, I really want to be fit. Why do I want to be fit? Because I want to live long, and I want to be able to be a good role model for my children. Okay, now there you've got an emotional why. You've got an emotional reason to get your ass out there and get motivated and get focused. When you can find that emotional trigger, that's what will help you get motivated, okay? So find and understand your why and what you want to get out of this journey. What are the results that you're looking for? What is the purpose of this whole thing? Because, who was it? Someone said to me yesterday, I always start asking myself why when it starts getting hard. You need to have that conversation prior to going into the battle, okay? I used to do this with my races. Before I went into battle, I would have a really big, deep conversations with myself about what I was prepared to go through to get there and why. What was my reason? I use this trick, for example. When I was in a really bad space in a race and I was feeling like I just cannot take one more step, I would bring up this image in my mind that my mum's life was in danger, and it was up to me to run 200 or whatever kilometres to save her life. And when I tapped into that emotional story, and I asked myself, well, would you keep going then? Would you take that next step? Somewhere you can find those reserves. When you love someone, then you will do it. In other words, the power lies within your mind to be able to find that motivation. And you have to find those triggers for you, whatever that is, whether it's wanting to prove to some bugger that you're not useless, or which was a motivation for me in my early years, or whether you wanted to do it for your children, or whatever it is, okay? Find that motivating factor and dig around on it. Dig around it, because then that will get you out the door and get you on track. Now, the second thing that I wanted to bring out is identity. When you have something as part of your identity, then you will make the change. When you just decide psychologically or intellectually that you're going to do something, but you haven't bought into it and you haven't changed your identity, then you will not make that shift. Now, what I mean by this is we have an identity. I have an identity that I am an athlete. It's who I am. It's part of the way I sit. It's part of the way I hydrate. It's part of the way I eat. It's part of the way I run. It's everything is included in that. I always measure myself by my own standards of what it means to be an athlete. To give you an example, that's a really silly example, but it brings home the point. Now, we all brush our teeth twice a day, right? That's the standard. None of us would go for 5 days without brushing our teeth. Well, I hope not, because we know our teeth will fall out. So it is an ingrained standard that we've been taught since we're children. That's what you do. You clean your teeth. It's part of your identity. It's part of who you are, and you will never slip below that standard. The same needs to happen when you want to become a runner. You want to take this identity on as a runner. Speak to yourself like a runner. I am a runner. I don't care if you're the slowest bloody turtle wading through peanut butter runner that you've ever seen, but you are a runner. When you change that identity, that is where the power lies. It's not about willpower. It's about changing that absolute standard that you won't go below. No matter what injury I have had in the past 25 years, I have always found a way to train some part of my body. And if it was my earlobes because nothing else was working, I was training something. Even when my mum had their aneurysm and she was unable to train anything, she couldn't even lift her hand to push a button, I was moving her body. It is a part of the standard that you set for yourself, and that is the power when you shift your identity. So start talking to yourself like a runner. Start reading and writing and listening to everybody who is a runner. Suck it all in, change your identity, make that shift, and you'll find that motivation comes. Then set your goals. I've got an ebook on goal setting. I can send you the link to that, and you can go and have a look at that. Go through that process, set those goals. When you put a line in the sand and you said, on that date I'm running that 10K or that half marathon or whatever it is, that is also a motivating factor, because you've got a line in the sand that you're aiming for, And when you don't, it's raining in the morning, like this morning, my husband says to me, oh, God, I meant to go out and run half a marathon this morning. It's part of my, training week for this week, but it's pouring with rain. I'd rather just snuggle up in bed. And I said, get your ass out there, because you've got the race coming up in 3 weeks and you have to. And he's, yeah, I know. Okay, all right, I'm out of there. And he's out in the rain. And afterwards he's like, oh, it was quite fun running in the rain. You have that line in the sand and you've publicly committed to it. Is another great trick. When you publicly commit, maybe on Facebook or wherever, and say, I'm doing this, then you better get your ass out of bed and get running, because people are watching. And using those tricks to discipline yourself, to be accountable, is a really good way to get motivated. So you two, I've got my eyes on you, Michael Robert Russ and Mike Williams. I want to hear that you have actually set in place what I've said, and I'm going to be checking in with you. So you're now accountable to me, okay? All right, we'll move on to the next one. Who have we got there? Sharon Colley, we've done that one. Michelle Lowe. Oh, and here's one. Marcia Ferguson, we'll go into that first. How to effectively train in the heat when morning runs aren't an option. I find my pulse rate is high really quickly, which is making running more than 10 kilometres a challenge at the moment, which is, a pain for me after having already run Kepler last year. Okay, so she's not handling the heat well. Neil, You've seen me run through Death Valley. How did I handle
I was going to say, it's exactly Death Valley, isn't it? It's exactly Death Valley. So the first thing is the simple things: allow yourself to acclimatise. Don't assume that you can do what you did in an event in New Zealand in the heat of another country. So, and I'm pretty sure Marcia, we've had some contact with her via email as well. And she's got to take time to acclimatise to what's going on there.
Yep, she's
Don't expect that to happen overnight. That's going to take a period of time. That will vary from person to person, but give yourself the time to acclimatise. The other things that work, and you can obviously talk people through this experience yourself, but keeping your pulse points cool.
Yep.
So one of the things that works exceptionally well is keeping your neck cool and keeping your wrist cool while you're running. So doing that, making sure, and just share some of your experiences with that before I go on.
Yeah, so jumping in there. So when I'm a specialist in heat. I ran everything from the Sahara to the Gobi to Death Valley. Where you're 50, 60, well not 60, 57 degrees was the top we had. When we were coming from New Zealand's winter to their summer as well, we needed 10 days. 10 days is what the scientists have said to us. You need 10 days to swap from the winter season here to the summer. So we went over 10 days earlier, and every day we built our running distance up. Now, for every 10 degrees that the temperature goes up, expect, I've forgotten the percentage, but there's a corresponding reduction in the pace that you can go, okay? And that is for everybody. The hotter it is, the slower you're going to have to go. It's the same with altitude. The higher it is, the slower you're going to be going. And even walking at, 5,000-6,000 metres is a mission. So lower your expectations. And don't compare yourself to when you ran it in a 10 degrees or 15 degrees in the middle of winter. It isn't the same ball game. You're comparing apples and oranges. They don't mix. Humidity into the mix, which we're having right now.
Yeah, I'm boiling.
Awful. We're all struggling with. I can't sleep. We're sweating at night, nightmaring, and all those sort of good things. Understand that this is part of the body. Now, a couple of the tricks that I used for Death Valley, for example, was by training in the sauna. So if you have access to a sauna, which not everyone does, but if you do, you might want to go and pop in there once a week, twice a week, and help the body acclimatise to it. And just stop expecting that your body will run at the same speed. It won't. And don't compare yourself to your last year's Kepler. It's dead and gone. Compare yourself to we're in the middle of summer. We're struggling with the heat, and the more you run in the heat, the better you will get in the heat.
And expect you also to jump in, Lisa, but just Marcia should expect a hydration plan to train as well.
Oh yeah.
So whatever she's doing from a hydration point of view, from an electrolyte point of view, that's going to need to change if it's the sort of heat. I think from seeing the question is hot temperature she's talking about. And if she's out trying to run in the middle of the afternoon in hot temperatures, and expect that the electrolyte demands on her body are going to be significantly different, as are the hydration demands. So she's got to take that into account as well. Make sure that she's hydrating her body pre-run. If she's even slightly dehydrated, you add the heat into that, and you're going to be in all sorts of discomfort.
Add 3 months of summer behind that, and I'll tell you what, I reckon 80% of the people listening to this will have dehydration issues, because these are things that are going over longer periods of time. One of the good tests that you can do, there's a skin fold at the back. I don't know if people can see that. At the base of your spine, if you can pull that out, it's nothing to do with the fat levels, it's to do with the hydration. If you can pull the skin out and get a good bit of whack of skin there, then you're well hydrated. If it's really tight and there's nothing, you're dehydrated on a deep cellular level. So you need to up your game with your water intake, but by the same token, your electrolyte intake. If you don't get that balance right, you can drink all the water in the world and you'll just piss it out. Okay, so you have to get your electrolytes in. And the way I do that is with Hammer Nutrition's Endurolite tablets, or for daily use, I often use Elite drops. Or CMD drops, so Elite, ELETE, great just to put a few drops in your water every day and up that level of the hydration that you're able to hold in the body, okay? So really, really important to get that balance between bringing the water in, but also keeping the electrolytes. If you dilute the electrolytes because you're putting in too much water, then it's not gonna work. You have to have those in balance. So I would check that that's not what you're doing, Marcia, that you're not neglecting your electrolytes and your hydration. I think that you might find things...
And one other thing, sorry, let's just throw in the mix as well, is don't be shy about changing the training program. If you've been operating on a training program in a cooler country where you do 5 runs a week, and you're like, right, I'm now going to stay on my same training plan, and I've got 5 runs a week. If you're having to go out to get those 5 runs in the heat of the afternoon, then you could drop to a 3 or 4 day run week, as long as you're still getting good quality runs and getting much more out of your training, rather than having 2 additional runs that are done in the scorching heat that dehydrate you, reduce your performance. Then all of a sudden you get to your long run at the weekend and there's nothing in the tank.
Yep.
So don't be shy about dropping down. If you've got any specific questions on that, obviously give us a call, because we've got some great results with doing exactly that, taking people on 5-6 days a week running and dropping them down to 3 days a week. Initially, it's like psychologically, I'm not doing enough, but because of the environment they're in, it is enough, and it gives them enough recovery time. And then the quality runs, the big weekend run, the hill sessions, the interval sessions, they're ticking along as they should be. It's those couple of extra additional short pace runs or shorter runs where people are blowing themselves out unnecessarily.
Yeah, and you've got to remember that you have a bucket of stress, right? And all the different things that you're putting into your stress bucket are bringing that up the level. If you're going and doing really high intensity running or long running in heat, that's a big stressor on the body. And then you might have emotional stress at home with relationships or kids or something, or you've got work stresses, and this whole bucket is starting to overflow, and that's where you get into the hormonal and the adrenal exhaustion and things like that going on, which really impact your performance going forward. And we see a lot of burnt out athletes with adrenal exhaustion, and me, I've totaled myself. I know what I'm talking about. I know what not to do, because I've done some major damage from doing the stuff that I've done over the last 25 years. Some of it was absolutely ridiculously extreme, and I've done massive damage to my kidneys, to my hormones, thyroid function, liver function. Don't go there. And now I know better. I was young and I was bulletproof, and I now know better, and we don't let our athletes, or we try not to let our athletes slip into that downward thing, because we've seen so many burnt out athletes. Neil and I at Running Hot Coaching are going to be getting into things like epigenetic testing this coming year, which is really fantastic and exciting. So just a heads up, this is where we use your genetics to detail really what type of training you should be doing, what type of eating you should be doing, what type of everything, made for you personalised health plans. We're also going to be doing boost camp and looking a lot more into adrenal exhaustion and bringing out that sort of information to you, so that it's you have to look at it. We're not just running coaches. We want to have healthy athletes that have longevity on the sport. We look at everything we do from a longevity point of view, a health point of view firstly. It's no good if I get you, to running a multi-day stage race in the Sahara or whatever, but I've smashed you, and then the following year you're totally gone and never to come back. That's not what we're after. We want you to achieve your race dreams, but to do it in a sensible manner, in a sustainable manner. And that's what we're experts at now, having made many mistakes. Okay, so I'll just go a couple of more questions here. Tracy Jago, who's an incredible athlete, who's done the Te Araroa Trail, 3,000 whatever kilometres it was. She's got I2B and weak glutes and outer knee pain that's been disrupting her for months. And she's a massage therapist, by the way, so she shouldn't be having this. I think we covered that earlier, really, the weak glutes, the I2B band, and outer knee pain. All you need to do is the mobility, the hydration, attack the inflammation, and you should have that sorted. I don't think it will be anything else but that.
I think the other thing, sorry to add in there, Lisa, as well, is just the consistency. It's amazing still the amount of people I speak to, they will still pick up a foam roller or start stretching when they get pain.
Yeah.
Don't wait for it. Yeah, it's too late. Don't wait for it. So you want to be doing it daily. It should become like you're running. You need to be as committed to the other aspects, like your strength, your mobility, your nutrition, your hydration, your mindset. You need to be as committed to all of those. Okay, if you're doing those consistently, you're in business.
So one of the other questions I had today from a young lady, she's got shin splints. She's just started running recently. Any quick tips for shin splints? Because it's a very common one, so let's attack that one.
It's again releasing depending on the point it's at, but releasing the soft tissue. So releasing soft tissue is one, making sure you release the soft tissue around the feet. Love your feet. Most people spend their time in shoes, socks, don't get their feet out. Spend some of your week with your feet out as much time as possible. let them relax, treat your feet like those of you using a foam roller already in your foam roller in your calves, roll your feet, look after them, let your toes move, let them touch the ground. Make sure you're well hydrated. So we talked about that earlier on as well. The hydration for the soft tissue is key, so make sure that's happening. Look at your technique. So your foot position. If you're overstriding, as an example, and hitting the floor with a heel strike and a lock knee, it's going to hurt, and it's going to manifest itself somewhere, and it might more than likely be in the shins. Make sure you're not overtraining as well.
Yep.
So when you're building up your training each week, as a general rule, no more than 10% increase each week. Many people make the mistake of ramping up really fast, and then wondering why something hurts. But releasing the soft tissue, looking at your technique, and if your body needs the rest, take a step back and let it have the rest.
And another tip there is loosen off your shoelaces. Many people buy their shoes and they're laced up, when they've got cold feet. And then they go and do, a big run, and their feet have swelled during that process, but they haven't loosened the shoes off. So now that you're cutting circulation off to the top of your foot, and I learnt this one really bad in a 340k race that I did through Germany. And on day one, I had my shoelaces up too tight, and oh my gosh, I had, 5 days of absolute hell, and then I had to be on crutches for the next 3 weeks. The pain was so bad. So don't underestimate getting bigger shoes. I highly recommend getting bigger than your normal street shoes when you actually go to buy your shoes. And remember that when you're just walking in off the street and you haven't been training, your feet aren't swollen. And women's feet especially swell more than men's. We need to have at least a half a size up to a size, and when I go to desert races, I take them 2 sizes bigger. That's how much my feet grow. So that could be a cause of your shin splints as well. I'll just see if we've missed anyone. Karima, a wonderful lady who's very supportive of what we do. She's got an ATM fracture back L5. That's the only information she's given me, unfortunately. Core work would be my recommendation there. I've had a very, very bad back. I broke 2 of my vertebrae, and I've got 4 collapsed discs. And over the years, these have hindered me really badly to the point where I was having spasms every, 10 times a day, and on the ground sort of spasms, unable to move, that sort of thing. And the doctors could not help me. It was too many vertebrae to fuse, and I didn't want to go down that route anyway. And I went to chiropractors and went everywhere, and nothing worked until Neil came along and he said, get your ass in the gym and do the core work. Do the deep core work, do the, your transverse abdominis, your quadratus lumborum, your glutes, your hips. If you concentrate on getting a massively strong core, then you'll stop. You can't say everyone's back pain is going to be gone forever, but I was in a really, really bad place, and I thought my career was over, and now I don't have any pain, and I've got this really strong core. And so it's not just doing 20 sit-ups or something. We're talking a whole regime, and once again, we've got all those programs at Running Hot Coaching on how to get your core strength, because you do have to be careful. There were some exercises that I couldn't do at the beginning because my back was too weak, or my stomach muscles were too weak in order to do them properly. So you have to have the right exercises and the right times and build it up so that you can strengthen that core. Anything else for back there, Neil?
No, I think it's spot on with the core. It's just be very, very careful with the back, get it assessed properly first, and then from there make sure you're doing the right. It's like building a house. You want to build a strong, deep foundation first.
Yeah.
Once you build the strong, deep foundation, you work inside out, and then you've got the deep core muscle strong. You can then build from there and start to add some more functional and bigger movements to it.
Yep. And I think, like some of the stuff isn't sexy, what we're saying, and it's groundwork, it's foundational work, but, if you build your house on sand, guess what, it's going to crumble. If you build it on a strong foundation, it's a pain in the ass to begin with, but you get into a routine, and once you've got it there, it's not that hard to maintain that level, okay? Once you've got the strength in the body, it's just a maintenance level. But getting there in the beginning is a little bit of hard work, but it really pays to set that foundation. Now, we've got a question here from Michelle Lowe. She did boot camp in gym 6 days a week and lost 15 kilos and injured her back. Boot camp stopped, and so did the exercise. I put most of the kilos back on, and I hate it. I loved running when I was minus the kilos, but now it's even harder finding the motivation to eat right and walk husband and I have committed to losing 10 kilos in 10 weeks. We're at day 1. Can you help? Yeah, we can help. Definitely can help. For starters, just because you had a back injury, like I said, you have to go in and build up the strength in that back area, and making sure that you do that in a proper manner and not too fast. But just because you're injured your back, you shouldn't have stopped training. You know, there are still a lot of other things that you can do. Now, Michelle, I mentioned before, my weight loss aha moment came when I ran through New Zealand, and I'd always struggled with my weight. I've always been, I'm a Māori ethnicity, a big muscular family on both sides, and I'm very athletically built, but I have a tendency to put on weight, and I've struggled with it my entire life since I was a teenager. And one of the reasons I started running was so that I could lose weight and control my weight, and I thought I could run for miles and then I could get away with eating lots because I love my food. And to a certain degree that worked, but it didn't ever. I could never lose that last 5 kilos that used to sit around my hips and waist and my legs, and it used to annoy the crap out of me. And when and I'd be doing huge mileage, and what I was actually doing was throwing my body into a state of absolute stress, and my hormones were being hit, and my metabolism started to slow down, and this was because I was doing too much training of the wrong type. And then when a few years ago when I changed once again, I talked to Neil, and we changed up my training. When I stopped doing the really long races, I started doing really short, sharp, interval type training, CrossFit type training, so body weight strength exercises, some heavier stuff as well, and really high intensity. And man, within 6 weeks my body shape changed, and I ripped up, and I got to the level that I was super stoked with, and I've been able to pretty much maintain that now for 5 years or so, 4 or 5 years. So when I was doing the massive races, I was actually a little bit overweight. I wasn't fat, but I was a little bit podgy. Now I'm leaner. I've got fantastic amount of muscle mass, but not bulky, and I feel much better. So for me, high intensity, short bursts of really high intensity training and strength training. When you build a little bit more muscle, we're not talking about becoming gorillas here. We're talking about having good functional muscle, which will help your running and help in everything that you do in life. It actually burns more calories every single hour of every single day, the more muscle mass that you have, and that helps you lose weight as well. And then looking at your hormone situation, your adrenal stress situation, and this might be counterintuitive, but going and doing yoga and breath-based work, so deep breathing exercises, meditation, yoga, you may find that you lose weight faster than running marathons. And that's counterintuitive, I know, but it's very, very true. And you can also use a combination, ideally, of yoga-type exercises, deep breathing, and then high-intensity work, if that's your goal, is to lose weight, which Michelle's looking like that's her main focus. So when people come to me and they say they want to do a marathon, the first thing I ask them, especially women, is, do you want to run a marathon for a marathon's sake, or do you want to lose weight? Because they're 2 different programs. We'll put you on completely different programs depending on what your goal is. So tell us what your real goal is. If your real goal is using a race to thinking that's good motivation, I get that. That's a good goal. But for weight loss, it's a different collection of exercises and a different structure to your program than we would if you seriously just want to do marathons. Okay, if that makes sense. Neil, we want to share a little bit just now.
Please, sorry to interrupt you. I've got 3 little monkeys that are waiting for me, so I'll leave you to it. I'm going to go and pick them up from school.
Okay.
And I'll leave you to it. I'm going to go and get them and take them somewhere to cool down.
Okay. Now, yes, he's got 3 kids under 6 at the moment, so we'll have to let you go. Thank you so much for your time, Neil, and I'll finish up here and let everyone else know.
All right, mate. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Can you leave that on for a second? Yeah. So I just want to do a bit of a pitch and talk to you about running hot coaching and let you know what we do there. So obviously Neil and I, as you can see from what we've been talking about, we're very, very passionate about what we do. We have a great amount of history together. Neil has over 22 years teaching health professionals and teaching trainers, and he's has a huge amount of experience, and he was my lifesaver. And to, you know, as you could tell from the story, he saved my career. When he came along, my career went from stale and burnt out. I'd done some crazy things prior to that, but when he came along, he rebuilt me, and my career skyrocketed, and I've never looked back since. And he really, really knows his stuff. And together we formed Running Hot Coaching, and we have systems that we've developed and tuned and fine-tuned over the years. We've trained hundreds of athletes. We know how to get you to the finish line time efficiently, without stress, without the burnout, without losing your motivation. And we know how to do that and get you to the finish line in the best shape possible. And we're really, really passionate about that. So we would love you to have you join our club. We have an offer that is $99 for the year. And this is going away very shortly, because we are changing our whole software systems and our delivery systems, and that's going to be tripling in price. So if you'd like to get in now at that price, then go and sign up now. That's called the Running Start Package, and that has where you've got all your plans on there. You've got access to this huge resource library where we've got articles, podcasts. You learn from other athletes. You have a whole series of videos, clean eating recipes, mindset information. There's a whole plethora of things and resources within that, and you have a training calendar, and you pick the plan, whether you're doing a half marathon, a 10k, or an ultra marathon, whatever your goal is, and the time that you're doing it, and you can work from those plans. Or if you'd like to work with us on a more intense basis, where you're actually having contact with your coach, then we have a $45 a week coaching package, and you can do that for as short as long as you like. There is a $99 sign-up fee, and once you've done that, you can just do it for 4 weeks or whatever, or 8 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it is, to build you up for a specific race, if you like, and then drop back down onto the other level of coaching package, if you like. So that $99 offer is only valid for the next couple of weeks until we change over our system. So, you know, hop online, go and check that out. It's a no-brainer. The amount of information that you're going to get from it, the amount of experience. And I've done all the hard work for you, and we make it fast, and we made it easy for you to take all our knowledge, take everything, all the tried and true, all the mistakes we've made, and make it easy for you, okay? So go and do that now. Hop over to Running Hot Coaching and hit the running start, or if you want that personalised stuff, please join under that, and we will see you again. We hope that these have answered some of your questions. Thank you so much for your feedback. We really appreciate it. This sort of stuff helps us develop new things for you and new programs as well, when we know exactly what you're struggling with. So we really, really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.